Hi, everybody. I watched a debate yesterday on the unbelievable channel of Justin Brierley, and it was between an atheist agnostic called Bart Ehrman and a Christian called Justin Bass. And I suspect that Justin Bass is a Protestant because of his views on Mother Mary, but I could be wrong, but that's my suspicion because one of the things that Bart Ehrman brought up in this debate were the Marian apparitions that have been well attested. And interestingly enough, Justin kind of pushed back on that a little bit. And so I'm going to get into that, but I'm also going to get into what I found were the primary arguments by Justin and what the primary rebuttals by Bart Ehrman were. So the idea was, did Jesus rise from the dead? The short answer is yes. The longer answer is we have plenty of evidence within the first 150 years. In fact, we have 42 sources within 150 years that give us good attestation to many events in the New Testament. And so we have a lot of support for that. 33 of those sources come from Christians. 9 are secular and include people like Josephus and Suetonius and Tacitus. But beyond that, one of the primary arguments that Justin used in this debate was he was talking about the appearances that were documented by Paul in 1 Corinthians 15. And he also talked about other appearances that were documented in the 4 Gospels. So Paul documented how Jesus had appeared to Peter, and then he appeared to the 12, and then he appeared to James, Jesus' relative. Then he appeared to 500, many of whom were alive, some of whom were sleeping. And last of all, he appeared to Paul. Interestingly, for whatever reason, and I'm not sure why, one thing that Justin did was he didn't focus on the group appearances. Instead, he hyper focused on the individual appearances to Peter, James, Paul, and Mary Magdalene, because all 4 Gospels documented that she was the first person to whom Jesus appeared. And so it was really interesting that he focused just on those 4 appearances. And then Bart tried to tear that down a little bit by claiming that they were expectations and that perhaps they thought they saw Jesus, but others might have decided to craft stories that they saw Jesus in the later years. But the interesting thing about that Justin didn't do is to speak to how we can know what they saw is true. One of the reasons is because of their personal testimonies. And Bart tried to say that because it wasn't written by Peter or by Mary Magdalene or by James, because it wasn't specifically written that they witnessed Jesus' resurrection, that must not have happened and that others had crafted the story later. However, that is just sort of a silly little assessment because you don't have to be an author to attest to something going on. People write biographies all the time. And so there were biographies essentially written, for example, by Luke about Peter and by Paul about all of them that I just mentioned in 1 Corinthians 15. So we've got these biographies. The other thing was Paul was not expecting to have happened to him what happened. Justin very well brought up the fact that Jesus appeared to Paul, who was on his way to Damascus to kill Christians. He had received his walking papers. He was going to murder Christians when suddenly Jesus appeared to them. And he didn't just appear to Paul that one time. He said, Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? And Saul said, who are you, Lord? He said, I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting. He didn't just appear in that one time, though. Take a look at the book of Acts and read the rest of the story, and also read the other books written by Paul. Jesus appeared to Paul and comforted him later in his ministry. So he did appear to Paul. He visibly appeared to Paul, and Paul converted on the spot because of it. Okay, that is the biggest piece of evidence that we have for Christianity, Paul's conversion. It's huge. But besides that, Jesus also appeared to Peter, who had been hiding out and who denied Paul 3 times. Jesus appeared to him, and he appeared to James, his brother, or they say some Protestants would say brother, I would say cousin, but he appeared to James as well. But the other interesting thing that Bart Ehrman brought up was he talked a lot about Mother Mary. And so that's what I want to take a look at. I wanted to first mention one of the reasons why we can know their attestations are true is because they were willing to die for that. They had seen the risen Christ. They knew firsthand whether or not he had resurrected, and they spent decades preaching for him despite being flogged, stoned, crucified in one case, with Jesus being crucified upside down, beheaded as Paul was beheaded. Both of these occurred in the early 60s, and all kinds of other terrible things happened to them. In fact, one thing that a little known fact is that many people don't know, except for you would know this if you were in Spain, is the vision of Mother Mary to James, not the same James there, but James, the brother of John and son of Zebedee. So as you recall in the book of Acts, he was one of the first people to be martyred. And Mother Mary bilocated and appeared to him in Spain, and she comforted him. And right now you can go there, and there is a church in Pilar, Our Lady of Pilar, Pilar, which is why many Spanish people name their kids, their daughters, Pilar. Our Lady of Pilar is the very first Marian apparition. It occurred while she was still alive, and it occurred around the year 40 to James, the son of Zebedee. So take a look at that, but we're also going to look at some other ones. So let's take a look at what some of these primary arguments. Another argument also was made concerning the comparison of Mormonism to Christianity. And so I'll get into that in just a moment. But I first want to show you some of this stuff. So I want to say hi also to Nikki and Chiami. Welcome. It's good to see you too. So here we go.
Corroborative evidence of later witnesses. What about the angel? What about the Mother Mary? Mm-hmm. Now, Mary appears regularly to people. It's completely well documented. Thousands of people claim this happens. I'm going to assume that since you're not Catholic, you don't think these appearances happened.
I'm open to the evidence, and I do think some of the stories of Mary is compelling. Evidence? I think some of the stories is compelling.
You think she does appear to people?
But I think what the issue
No. Do you think she appears to people?
No, I don't. I don't know.
You just said the evidence was compelling.
Well, I said it's it's something to look into. I'm saying it's enough to look into.
Why don't you look into it? This would be very important.
I have looked into it.
Okay, so
but let me answer. I think it lacks the unexpectedness. So it makes and it normally happens in Catholic contexts.
No, this is completely wrong. It
Let's let Justin finish his point.
It normally happens in Catholic contexts. Okay. And so people who are already Catholic,
yes,
who expect, they pray to Mary regularly. They expect saints they pray to saints. They expect this kind of thing, and it's happened in only a handful of situations that have actually been confirmed by the church. But I ask you, if Mary is actually appearing to people, would that support the resurrection or not support the resurrection?
No, I'm saying that you have better...
No, answer that question.
I will answer it by telling you that we have better evidence for Mary appearing to people, many groups of people in the modern period, than we have for Jesus appearing to people.
So it's very interesting because I did see, this is the one place where I have to agree with Bart Ehrman. I usually don't agree with Bart Ehrman. I make lots of videos about Bart Ehrman, and I have videos called Bart's Blunder and how you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink, and Bart's obstinacy. I have videos on that, but here I do agree with him. You have to look into the visions of Mother Mary. And this idea of expectedness is completely off because he obviously has not looked into the visions. We have Diego, who Mary appeared to in Guadalupe. Diego wasn't expecting to see Mother Mary. Nobody was expecting to see Mother Mary. Even Bernadette at Lourdes, she was not expecting to see Mother Mary. And you look at the visions of the kids at Fatima, they were not expecting to see Mother Mary at first when she first appeared to them in 1917 in May. So after a while, yes, they were expecting to see Mother Mary, and she repetitively appealed to those kids at Fatima all the way up until October. She appeared monthly, all the way up until October, when 70,000 people whom were agnostics, atheists, Christians of all different stripes, Catholics, Protestants, a lot of people who wanted to discount the visions of Mother Mary. The miracles of the sun occurred very clearly to all of these people. It's documented in Portugal in newspapers. And so, in fact, a newspaper called O Secularo, go take a look at that newspaper because it documented this event and took pictures of it. And so, yes, we do have a lot of stuff going on with Mother Mary. If you don't look into it as a Christian, you're not being fair to your faith. Does she only appear to Catholics? No, she has appeared to others. And in fact, she appeared, one of her really amazing appearances was Our Lady of Saluva, where she appeared to, I think it's called Saluva. I got to double check that. But one of the appearances of Mary was to a Calvinist pastor who converted to Catholicism. And so, yes, she has appeared to people of other faiths, but she also wanted people to be Catholic. The reason she wants people to be Catholic, and the reason she supports the billion Catholics out there and does regularly appear to many of them, is because she believes in what Jesus said. On this rock, you are Peter. Peter's another word for rock. And on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not prevail. That is the Catholic Church. It has been handed down through the papal succession. That is verified by people as early as coming right from the earliest popes after Peter, and also people like Saint Ignatius, who was martyred around 108 AD, and other saints, Polycarp, and many, many more. Irenaeus, go take a look at it. Justin Martyr, take a look at all of that kind of stuff, and you will see the succession. But the other thing that he argued about was Bart argued about the angel Moroni. Now, the interesting thing about the angel Moroni appearing to Joseph Smith, and also the angel Gabriel, supposedly, actually it was first known as a jinn, appearing to Muhammad. The interesting thing about those two appearances is that was portended by Paul. Jesus actually proactively said not to pay attention to these angelic appearances because it really could be demons. So I actually think that the angels Moroni and whomever appeared to Muhammad, I think that those are actually probably demonic spirits. And so I don't discount the fact that Joseph Smith or Muhammad might have had an encounter, a spiritual encounter. I just question the side that the spirit was on. I would say that it was on the other side, speaking out against Christianity in some ways, saying Jesus doesn't have the same status in both of those cases as we know he should have. And so that was another argument that Bart had made. So I would also take a look at that. Also, one of the arguments that Bart made, and actually here was one that I thought was quite significant. So one of the things that Justin said was Bart said, well, the resurrection couldn't have happened because it violated the laws of nature. And in that same way, by making that claim, you would be denying every single miracle that has occurred in the world. And there are many thousands and thousands of people who have claimed that miracles have occurred, and other people who've witnessed those miracles. There's some, like, for example, there have been ones where people have been told to get up and walk, and they were able to walk again. And I've documented some of those. I've had Susan Slam RN on my channel before, and she has a personal miracle of when she herself was in hospice, and she had a very significant sense of Jesus who was going to cure her, and Jesus did cure her, and Susan was able to leave hospice, which is where you usually go in your very last days, and she's perfectly healthy today. And so we have that. And so those kind of things happen. And there are many documentations of that. We see those all throughout the world today, especially in places where you might not have as much hospital care, like in Africa and some other places. And so take a look at some of those. Craig Keener apparently has written a whole book on miracles. You can go to Lee Strobel's book on miracles. Lots of documented miracles out there. But one of the things that Bart said, he said it couldn't have occurred because it violated the laws of nature. And then one of the great things that Justin said is he said, take a consideration of this. What also violated what you would expect was the fact that out of 107 billion people who walk the planet, I think he might have been getting those numbers from probably the Population Reference Bureau, which I actually think is 108 billion people walk the world. But out of all of the billions of people who walk the world, how is it possible that this one obscure, iterant priest, essentially, Jesus, was able to change the world in the way that he did? Gamaliel predicted this in Acts. He said, if the God that Peter and the apostles are following is the true God, you will not be able to stop them. And no one was able to stop them. They went on to change the world. By 313, between 5 and 6 million people were worshiping Jesus despite not having legal protections. By 313. Now, 313 is when Constantine legalized Christianity. And within that next century, between 50 and 60 million people had become Christians, converted to Christianity. How is that possible if that's not God-driven? And I think that was a really good argument that was made by Justin Bass. And so I support that argument. I think it was a very good one. I also think that what Bart Ehrman should take a look at is take an honest look at the gospel accounts. Now, Bart wants to discount everything as being religious or theology, and he wants to exalt everything being historic and secular. And I think that that's a bias. It's wearing clouded lenses. And I think that's a real fault of Bart. I think that you can combine all of these different pieces of knowledge and lines of information to form a coherent and cohesive story concerning the resurrection. And I think you should. I don't think you should try to look at things through a biased lens where you discount miracles that have been attested and people were willing to go to gruesome deaths because of it. You don't go to gruesome deaths for something that you think that you might have crafted in your mind or hallucinated. You could go to gruesome deaths because you know that you sat and you actually ate with the physical Jesus. Jesus shared fish with people. He appeared multiple times over a 40-day period, individually to people and in groups. And so take a look at all of that kind of stuff. I think you're going to enjoy it. So let's listen to what else is said here. Actually, I'm going to go to the closing area because I think there were some other pretty good statements. So let's go.
That would be something.
But it's happening with Jesus.
I don't think so.
No. It's a fact that it's happening.
No, it's not.
It's just whether or not he's actually appearing to them.
There are 8 billion.
So what happened right here was Justin had identified a number of cases in Muslim countries where Jesus has been appearing. They call him the man in the white, and people recognize him as Jesus and convert to Christianity because of it. And so that has been attested all around the world. It's going on right now. Jesus has been appearing to people. And I think that you should really consider that and consider that it's not happening in the reverse situation. So we don't see Muhammad, for example, appearing or that kind of thing. And I think that that's true too. However, I can say something that maybe he wouldn't say is we have to be very careful and to test any spirits that do appear because they could be of demonic nature. So there is a possibility that people could have encounters with spirits in other faiths. And of course, I support the idea from Psalm 82 and Deuteronomy 32 and Genesis 6 and what Michael Heiser said about the unseen realm. We're in a very spiritual world and there's a spiritual battle going on. And so we're very likely to have spirits appearing in various forms around the world, and you have to test them. You will know them by their fruits, as they say. And you will know them if the appearances are consistent with what you'd expect from the Bible. Not every single Marian apparition has been approved by the church. Some have been outright rejected, and you should look carefully at why. In some of the cases, according to people like Father Rippiger, the reason why sometimes the apparitions have been rejected is because Mary is acting in ways totally inconsistent with how she was acting in the Gospels, meaning that she was more quiet. She had a few words to say. She wasn't doing a lot of excessive blabbing, which is what some people have said that she has done, and the church has rejected those particular apparitions. So the church is very careful in its examinations of apparitions and its examinations of miracles. For example, at Lourdes, despite the fact that around 7,000 claims have come in for miracles, people claiming healing miracles, the church has only formally approved of 70 of them. You have to go through an extremely rigorous process to get proof, to get that the church will actually say this is an actual miracle. And only in 70 particular cases did that occur. But it did occur. And I would really encourage you guys to take a look at that. So here we go.
There are 8 billion people in the world. The people who've never heard of Jesus do not have dreams of him.
No, one of the examples in my book is Samuel Morris, a guy from Libya, and he heard the voice of Jesus. He went to Taylor, I don't know if you heard of Taylor University. They have a statue for him. They dedicated a whole hall for him. He had never heard of Jesus. He heard the voice of Jesus. He survived this tribal attack. It's an amazing story. I mean, again,
it's amazing. Great.
Like Pincus Lapide, you should look into these. Great. These are powerful. Yeah. But there definitely are people who have never heard of Jesus, and they have these visions. They have these dreams. And
why do you think it doesn't? So again, I don't think this is a historical argument, but just out of curiosity, why do you think it's taken so long? And why don't you think Jesus just appears to everybody?
Well, because I agree with Blaise Pascal. He said, God isn't interested, I'm paraphrasing, but he said, God isn't interested in just convincing the intellect. He wants to incline the will.
That was a great quote, and I think that was a really important statement. I think I have to agree with Justin Bass on that. God doesn't appear to everybody. Jesus does not appear to everybody. Mother Mary doesn't appear to everybody. She does appear at times. She's appeared to me, I can tell you that, when I was in college. She comforted me, and she said everything's going to be okay. And it was in a time when I was very seriously hurt. I was very sad about a few different things. I was very depressed, and she appeared and comforted me. And the next day I felt spiritually clean. I felt in a way that I'd never felt in my life as I walked around Florida State's campus. It was an amazing, amazing thing. And she hasn't appeared since, just that one time. And it was a pretty amazing experience. And I have heard the voice of Jesus one time. He corrected me. That's what he did. he told me about something that I was thinking that was incorrect, and he changed my mind. And he did it in a really powerful way. And I listened because I'm not a fool. You listen when the Lord speaks. And so that's another thing. That was in 2016 when I was at a conference in San Antonio. And so we do have those kind of things occurring, and it does change people's lives. It occurs all around the world. My sister has had things happen to her too. One time she was in a rip current in the ocean, and she heard the voice of Mother Mary tell her how to swim with the rip current instead of against the rip current. And that saved her life. So that was something that happened. And she also had a situation where she was sitting at her desk and she asked God to give her a sign. And this is another time. She asked God just if he could just give her a sign. And the cross, the crucifix that was on the desk, moved across the desk on its own. She said, okay, that is a sign. That is something. And so those two events, those have occurred for Jen. I have no reason to doubt that she had those experiences. She doesn't have a reason to lie to me. I don't have a reason to lie to her. I've been sharing the information about my experiences with her many times, and she believes me because I have no reason to lie. Why would I lie? It's the truth. But the thing is that we can know about the apostles that is so impressive is what they did for their faith. In fact, think about the bravery and the courage these men and women had. Think about the courage that Mother Mary had standing at the foot of the cross of Jesus and not shrieking, not yelling out, not screaming, not acting hysterical, just calmly standing at the foot of the cross. She knew that Jesus was going to face that fate. She stood bravely at the foot of the cross, accepted what happened. And of course, she also knew he was going to resurrect 3 days later, which he did. And so that's pretty powerful stuff. We also had John at the foot of the cross. And that is also very powerful. He was one of the few apostles who was there. So that's pretty powerful stuff too. But these men were willing to do all kinds of things. Listen to what Paul went through for his faith. He was a very ardent Jew who went on to write more books in the New Testament than anybody else. And he also probably suffered more than anybody else. He was whipped, he was flogged, he was bitten by a snake, he was shipwrecked, he was beaten, he was jailed. He had all kinds of things happen to him. And eventually he was beheaded by Nero in Rome. Peter was crucified, probably upside down, also by Nero in Rome, early 60s. So we have those events occurring. These men were extremely brave because they know that they saw the risen Jesus. They sat down with him. They ate fish with him. Really powerful stuff. And so just think about that. Think about how great that is, how wonderful that we have it, because now we have hope. We have hope that we'll have divine justice and divine mercy and divine love. Got hope? Here we go.
So I think he wants to humble us. So I think he wants people to not just be convinced. He could easily do that. He could do something wild in the sky and convince all of us. He could appear to you.
And he has. So I encourage, if Justin happens to watch this, Justin, please look into the miracle of the sun in 1917 and Fatima, because he did do something in the sky, and that's in modern times, and it was recorded.
Laws of physics, and
he could do that at any point. But I think the God of the Bible, what I think, and Jesus, they want us to humble ourselves.
Okay.
They want us. Jesus wants us to come to him and seek him with all our heart, and he'll respond.
So why does he show up to some people then? Why does he show up to some people, not others?
I don't, I can't say exactly why Jesus appears to this person or not, but I would say maybe it's because that person has more open heart and they're responding in some way, kind of like Cornelius in Acts. He's seeking, the true God, and what happens?
So the fact that
an angel appears to Peter, and Peter brings the gospel to Cornelius.
So people with an open heart have dreams of Jesus, and then they convert, and people don't. And so, okay. That's fine. If that's your theological view, that's fine. It's a religious point of view.
See, part right there is trying to discount a religious point of view or a theological point of view, but there is nothing wrong with having a religious or a theological view. What I would encourage Justin Bass to do is to take a look at the Marian apparitions, because those are recent. There's cases, for example, in Egypt, where she appeared over a significantly long period of time to many, many people, including many Muslims. And so you can take a look at that. That's Our Lady of Zaytun, very much to take a look at. Look at Our Lady of Akiva, other appearances by Mary. Look at Our Lady of Saluva, Our Lady of Guadalupe, Our Lady of Lourdes, Our Lady of Fatima. Take a look at all of those cases. And have an open heart, as you have just told us to do about Jesus. You should also have an open heart, because the kinds of messages that Mary is bringing is, she was telling us, for example, at Fatima, she predicted that if the world did not repent, if people did not repent and also follow a particular process that she laid out, that Russia was going to spread its airs. Wasn't long after that Russia became communistic. Communism spread all over the place. A terrible error. 120 million people have perished early under communism. It was a horrific event at the Holodomor in Ukraine around 1932 and 1933, where the Russian government intentionally starved the Ukrainians, and over 6 million of them died. And very few people even know about this, because it's not taught in our textbooks, which have been influenced by communism. Our public textbooks, you won't find the Holodomor in there. My students do not know what that is until I tell them what it is. And so you want to look at those kind of things, those apparitions, and what Mary said to Sister Lucia, who was also one of the three at Fatima. Mary also told Lucia that her two companions were going to perish soon, and they both did. They both perished when they were very young, very soon after those appearances at Fatima. But Sister Lucia lived on. She lived till 2005. Amazingly enough. And she was able to see all of the stuff play out that Mother Mary had predicted would happen. And so we have those kind of things happening. So take a look at those, keep an open heart, and make sure you just do that. So let's go.
I didn't say I know for sure, but I'm just saying it's likely that it would, you know very well from the Bible that depending on someone's response in their heart, if they're seeking or if they're hardening their heart, a lot of times that depends on their interaction and how God is.
That's fine. I mean, it's a religious view, and it's fine. I mean, it's not the sort of view that a historian would use to argue for something that happened in the past.
Where I think you are trying to tie it to something historical, Justin, is that for you, it seems to be that this happens in today's world, let's say, for Christianity. People from other worldviews aren't having visions of the Prophet Muhammad here in the UK. They're not having visions of.
I don't know if that's true.
Well, people, I'll say it this way: people of their own religions, they do have visions, but across the way, that doesn't happen.
But we would expect that to happen. Again, take a look at the unseen realm and the divine council, or the gods of Psalm 82, very clearly laid out by Michael Heiser, the late Michael Heiser. So may God bless his soul. He's rest in peace, Michael. So one of the things I'm just also noticing here, notice how Bart is sort of exalting historians and demoting the people who use their religious lens to look at things. I think that that's a big error on his part. I think also that if you look at even secular historians, they will tell you what people believed and how Christianity began, because people claim to have seen the risen Christ. People will say that, and that's absolutely true. And if you want to be honest with yourself and you want to know the truth, ask God. He will not leave you alone if you let him know that you really want to know the truth. He says, ask, seek, and find. If you ask with a humble heart, contrite spirit, and seek him, actively look for the truth. Don't be afraid of the truth, because the truth will set you free. Do not be afraid of the truth. So here we go.
And it's amazing. I mean, you can even go to Google and search. I've done it in YouTube.
Oh, well, Google's the one I trust, especially the internet. I think, especially if you have a Wikipedia page, I'm there.
But you can't find like Christians are not having visions of Muhammad and Krishna and Buddha.
Okay.
Buddhists are not having visions of Krishna.
But you're saying Muslims are having visions of Jesus.
Muslims are, and here's the amazing thing: Muslims aren't having visions of Joseph Smith, and then saying, "Oh, Mormonism's true." That's never happened.
No, I don't know if it's true or not, and I think I think that's incredible. I think it's
I do encourage everybody, do pray for Bart and pray for people who are like him. Romans 1:20 tells us that God has revealed himself to everyone in nature. He's given us a general revelation of him. But he also says that those who actively suppress knowledge of him, he is going to give them a powerful delusion. And so Bart actually thinks he is right. He looks out the window at beautiful nature. He looks up into the cosmos. He sees the stars. He sees he sees beauty in nature. He sees flowers, roses, beautiful nature. Sees all the things that we see, that we attribute to God, because it's impossible in my mind for that to come just out of nowhere with no intention. It makes it very logical and possible that there was a beginning And we have a creator who created all this, who spoke the world into existence. And even in the book of John, and the word became flesh and dwelt among us. So he sent his one and only son, his only begotten son, to save the world. So whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life, it says in John 3:16. But if you don't believe in him, your faith is not going to be good. He is going to grant you your wish. He will let you walk away. That is not something you want to do. You don't want to walk away from God, because life without light and love of Jesus is death and darkness and evil. And it's all of the opposite characteristics of God. So if you love truth, you're going to see the lies. If you love benevolence, your kindness, another word for kindness, you're going to see evil actions. You're going to see hatred. If you love love, you'll see evil. If you love all of those different kinds of things. So if you love all of the goodness and justice and mercy and those sorts of traits, come to realize that we have an objective moral lawgiver who implanted those desires within your conscience. And you know, if you violate your conscience, that you're violating something that God set up for you within you. He set you up to value the truth and to seek the truth. And he is the truth. He is the way, the truth, and the life. He's made us all to be like that. But he also lets us walk away. And just to speak of one more thing that you might find sort of interesting, I'm not sure if you find it totally interesting, but you might find this a little bit interesting, to speak to one more thing, is that I did one time have a very negative spiritual experience. It was a horrific spiritual experience. I've talked about it before, but what I did notice was that spirit was extremely cold, extremely evil, and devoid of every single bit of light, completely devoid of light. That's how I know what it's like on the other side. And you don't want to be there. You don't want to go there. I don't want to be like that kind of minister that's preaching hellfire and brimstone and all that kind of stuff. But truly it is hell. It's like hell there. You don't want to go there. So anyway, I want to say thank you, everybody, for coming in here. Please like, subscribe, and do come again. And just remember, whether you eat, drink, or whatever you do, do it all for the glory of God. Thank you.